Just look at the language around newspapers, the language surrounding people who do wicked things. They're monsters, fools, idiots, you name it, right? And not long ago, I read a brilliant book by Ian Browning called Ordinary Men, which if you read nothing about the Holocaust, it's the only book to read. It's the best book. It's this idea that he follows the Einsatzgruppen group and a battalion that start out postmen, PhDs, musicians, etc. And it also questioned these ordinary men. How did they end up standing with a gun in their hand, shooting children on the edge of a ravine somewhere in Eastern Europe? They were just ordinary blokes. And for me, unless you can understand fully, not just as is the tendency amongst all of us, and certainly in the work I make, where we want to cast ourselves as the hero of the narrative, that, confronted by that moment, would I give somebody an attic? Would I risk my life or the life of my family for the noble purpose? The glib answer is, of course, yes, I would be on the right side of history. Throw in 10 years of propaganda. The Nazi guards were, 13, let's say, at the time that Goebbels starts his poison. They're 23 by the time they've had 10 years of hate and laws that have demonized the Jews, and then you're a camp guard in Auschwitz. And unless you understand, I really believe this, that it is too possible for you to do that sort of work with gusto. Yes. It's possible that it lives within you. I'm not sure you understand fully the completion of what it means to be a human. And because I know that lives within us, I think I don't understand it. It's not a riddle, but it's something that immediately when I see it or touch the face of wickedness, let's say, let's call it that, I understand it's a human action and it's not the action of monsters. No. And one of the difficult and dangerous things that we do is use that sort of language.
It's reassuring, I suppose, in a way, because it means it can't happen.
Can't be you.
Can't be me.
Right. I mean, when somebody does a wicked thing, a monster has done it.
Yes.
The language around capital punishment, a field I used to work in, it's always the monster, the demon.
Yes. I suppose it bleeds into more obvious prejudices as well, is that you think somebody is doing something awful because of their status, and then therefore you're not of that status, so that kind of thing couldn't happen to you either. This constant attempt, these bogus compartmentalizations that provide people with bogus security.
I was on the border, Ukraine-Poland, when the train started coming over in the invasion. It was a gift and a privilege, that word again it was, to speak to communities across Britain on Good Morning Britain and This Morning and just describe what was taking place. And there was a moment where I spoke, we only had one producer, and he went over there. I spoke to this Russian guy. It was the second time I visited, and I said, what had happened? And he said he'd been in a chlevna, it's a Russian word, breadline, which immediately summons up and evokes images of lung butter estates from the Soviet Empire, right? And he said he was standing in a bread line outside of a shop, magazine. What happened? My nephew was killed. We held on to the end and we left. And he was walking away. And I said, well, where was this bread line? The answer was, it was outside their equivalent of an Aldi. The reception centre in Shemesh was in a Tesco under the arches of McDonald's. And, that for me was the most profound, deep and richest kind of reflection, let's say, once I returned, is that we look around this world of ours, even London, and there's all this stuff, these kind of delightful, delicious diversions that make us think that don't need to worry about it. Of course there won't be laws that are going to interfere or affect my freedom because there's all this stuff about Weimar Germany. You go back, listen to the music. I mean, that wouldn't have felt any different from, Shoreditch.
No, of course.
Beginning of women's rights, etc. And it's this sense in which we live in a world now where there is so much diversion. We forget to be constantly, meaningfully vigilant against this. And that's why the survivors and understanding what happened really matters. When I talk about the camps in Auschwitz, I'm always at pains to remind people that's the end of the damn story.
Yes, of course.
It's important.
Yes.
What matters though is the beginning.
And the beginning would have had no inkling of where
It was a vote,
of where it was
right?
gonna
Gradual grab of power. There was a vote. Laws are passed. It takes a long old time in human terms, right? And that's so essential, kind of, for people to remember.
Which is why some people warn about language having echoes of 1930s Germany and end up with a whole world of trouble falling down upon them.
I think that sometimes that's, one of the difficulties is that there is a real special sensitivity, understandably, with the word Nazi, and it's become weakened and diluted.
Yes, very
and
much
you jolly well better mean what you say when you throw that stone. And nowadays, especially on social media again, that you cannot devalue the critical nature of that word, because if you use it carelessly,
then it does
do violence. Right, that's the problem. But making a point about how language matters
without using
is
the word
perfectly
Nazi.
possible.
Of course.
Right. And you can even locate it in the past, and it doesn't need to be just then. You can choose there, you can choose Rwanda, you name it. But this sort of idea that somehow modernity is going to cushion us from a descent again into what could be human catastrophe is a nonsense.